day, my name is Angelo. This is Nation Voices Tower, the most preferred YouTube channel. Of course, I have been asking how we have been. This time around, I'll ask you how are you faring, because the country seems to be overjoyed right now because one of the culprits has been caught, Mrs. Betta Edu. The former, let us call her former, because she has been officially suspended by Ashiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president, the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. But let's deviate from the servants and the employees now. Let's talk about the employer. Bola Ahmed Tinubu's records that were supposed to be released by the Federal Bureau for Investigation, FBI, in the US, we have not forgotten, all right? So if you think we've forgotten, nah. You know, when we talk of his subordinates, we'll talk about him because obviously they are learning from the boss, all right? Yes, these documents were supposed to be released under the FOI law, all right? Yes, filed by David Hundeyin and Aaron Greenspan, all right? Now, I have a grip on a particular document, not a document though, a documentary, yes, because it involves video evidences. A documentary that is straight from a combined effort of 6 agencies from the United States. Are you not excited? Yeah, so let us refresh our minds again with the Bola Tinubu saga, because it seems as if he thinks we have forgotten. We have not, and we can never forget. Of course, the internet does not forget. This particular documentary is a new release from Aaron Greenspan's website, the plain site, and it's about the dealings and the dark side of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Forget about the first part you've heard, because this particular one will blow you off. All right, just when we thought we had seen it all, then Aaron Greenspan struck us again sometime few days ago. I'm sorry I'm bringing these updates now, but I tell you what, it is still worth watching. All right, he termed this particular documentary as Bola Tinubu Part 1, or also known as, or AKA, or he codenamed it Laundered in Chief. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? He codenamed it Laundered in Chief. That means, of course, the meaning of launderer is clear, crystal clear. So that means our president is a world launderer, like he has been ascertained and confirmed to be a universal, I don't know what to, a universal criminal. That is what he's trying to say by this documentary, all right? In this documentary, you're going to be having a grip on the web traffic that was caused by Bola Ahmed Tinubu's money laundering cases sometime last year. The US web experienced a wide range of traffic, and you'll be hearing the reasons why Bola Tinubu's case caused traffic on web far away in the United States. You are going to be hearing more about his asset forfeiture. Of course, we just heard about the forfeiture of over $460,000 to the FBI, all right? But this time around, you will hear about his asset forfeiture. You're going to hear the dark history of Ashiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not from his days in Chicago, not from his days in Nadeko, but from his days as Lagos State Governor. Yes, lots of people don't know about that part. You will know of his dark history as from his days as Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Lagos, all right? Then you would also hear a part of his implication by Agent Kelvin Moss. You know, the first person who got implicated was his other crony, all right, known as Abiodun Agbele. That was the first arrest that was made then, and then Muiz Akonde fled, and then Bola Tinubu fled. All right, so this particular documentary will give you a grip on the information of what really happened and how Agent Kevin Moss of the FBI and the DEA got them in police nets. All right, then you're going to be hearing why Bola Ahmed Tinubu was not criminally charged at that time. But don't forget, he went into jail and served a short term together with his criminal gang. All right, so you will know why they didn't criminally charge him, but asked him to forfeit some money and his property. You're also going to have a grip on the full documentary from 6 security agencies, the Department of Justice, first of all, and other agencies. All right, these agencies were copied with the FOI that was, requested by David Hundeyin and and Aaron Greenspan. All right, you hear the full documentary from the DOJ, the Department of Justice of the United States. You're going to hear the documentary compiled from combined efforts from the DOJ, the Federal Bureau for Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, the Internal Revenue Service, that is the IRS, and then the State Department, and then the CIA, all right? Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency, all right? So these six security agencies combined efforts had this documentary brought to us through the plain sight owned by Aaron Greenspan.
Good. Great to see you. Thanks for being with me.
Most people probably aren't familiar with Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who just a few months ago was shaking the hand of Bill Gates. Here at Plain Sight, we weren't until last year, when an obscure case eclipsed interest in Elon Musk, rising to the top of the list of most frequently viewed cases on Plain Sight. This was surprising because according to Google, Elon Musk often gets more search interest than just about anything, even the Honda Civic, which reliably outpaces interest in popular sports teams such as the Boston Red Sox, and Joe Biden, the President of the United States. Tinubu's sudden rise to the level of America's tech elite was quite remarkable. The caption for that obscure case was USA versus account 263-226-700 et al., a not particularly helpful description of what it was about. In Latin, et al. Means and others, so the case is essentially the United States versus a group of numbered bank accounts. Generally, when the United States sues an inanimate object, the dispute is a civil forfeiture action, meaning that the government took possession of someone's stuff, whether it's cash or whiskey or 50,000 cardboard boxes. A quick glance at the docket showed that many of the defendant bank accounts were held by someone named Bola Tinubu, and there were no documents accessible on Pacer, the federal court database where you'd normally expect to find them, or even Court Listener, which, like Plain Sight, makes some Pacer documents freely available. Having declared victory in a controversial February 2023 election, Bola Tinubu is now widely recognized as the president of Nigeria. But when USA versus account 263-226-700 et al. Became the most viewed case on Plain Sight, Tinubu was merely a presidential candidate running against several others. The fact that he had been governor of Lagos State didn't hurt his chances. Neither did the fact that practically no one knew about his history with the United States justice system. In a way, this wasn't too surprising. The commercial internet didn't even exist until 1995, and Pacer didn't start reliably cataloging the proceedings of the federal courts until about 10 years after that. When you find a case involving docket entries from before 2005, it's a safe bet that you'll have to ask someone to dig paper files out of a box somewhere, usually for a fee, if that box can still be located. Fortunately, a Nigerian media outlet called Sahara Reporters had already gotten their hands on paper copies of these documents, which were posted on their website as one big Adobe Acrobat PDF file. Unfortunately, the document looked like it had been scanned with whatever the equivalent of an Atari 2600 would be for scanners. The words were barely legible, and the whole thing looked like maybe someone had manufactured it in Photoshop. So even though the file had been out there for years on a Nigerian website, there was understandably skepticism in the Nigerian online community that the documents were even real. But these documents were real. We separated out each one from the Sahara Reporter's post and matched it to the proper slot on the 1993 Plain Sight docket, a basic task that no other website had ever done with respect to this particular case, which ended up making a difference, because people started to notice. With the documents in their proper locations on Plain Sight, it was a bit easier to figure out what the case was actually about. There was a great amount of detail in an affidavit written by Internal Revenue Service Special Agent Kevin Moss, which laid out the majority of the story. The United States had filed a civil forfeiture action not against Tinubu himself, but against his money, hidden away in bank accounts in Chicago, Fairfax, Virginia, and London. These accounts were opened in Tinubu's own name, his wife's name, and in the name of a company, or maybe two companies, with a presence in both Nigeria and Washington, D.C. Compass Finance and Investment Company Limited in Nigeria, and Compass Investments Company Limited in Washington, D.C. Tinubu was accused in the IRS affidavit of laundering money for a Chicago heroin distribution ring that sourced much of its product from Nigeria, thanks to a man named Muiz Adegboyega Akande. Akande imported drugs from Nigeria with the help of his nephew, Abiodun Abele. Using his training as an accountant, Tinubu handled the cash. Based on the IRS affidavit filed by the United States Department of Justice in open court, Tinubu had committed at least 6 federal crimes. He ultimately settled the case with the United States government, which took $460,000 of his money and sent it to the Federal Reserve Bank for destruction. The rest, it seems, about $1 million, he got to keep. Meanwhile, those on the front line selling drugs in Gary, Indiana, including Edwards and his crew, went to prison. After reading the grainy pages over a few times, there was one question that nagged. Why wasn't Tinubu criminally charged? For someone who had lied to federal law enforcement, failed to file a tax return, conspired to launder money, actually laundered money, defrauded multiple banks, and used funds from unlawful activity, it seemed like he got off pretty light. There were other questions as well. Why were civil forfeiture case materials not available on Pacer like every other federal civil lawsuit? Could the intelligence community have something to do with this state of affairs? And could this guy really become Nigeria's president? Well, as it turned out, he could, and in short order he did. The traffic to Plain Sight was coming from social media discussion of a publication called West Africa Weekly, which had written up a fantastic expose of Tinubu and his involvement with narco-trafficking. To build on the IRS affidavit, already an excellent and comprehensive source of information about Tinubu's criminal activities, and the investigation by David Hundeyin in West Africa Weekly, we decided to file some Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, requests about Tinubu and his associates in the heroin trade that might help fill in some of the gaps in the story. At this point, I should clarify exactly what the word "we" means. Plain Sight is the result of a lot of different people's contributions, but I took a personal interest in this matter because it seemed like a case where access to records in the United States justice system was just as important as the substance of the records themselves. I'm Aaron Greenspan, and I created Plain Sight in 2011. So, over a period of a few months in 2022 and early 2023, I filed 9 FOIA requests with 6 federal agencies: the Executive Office for United States Attorneys, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the State Department, and the Central Intelligence Agency. It took a while, but eventually all of them were denied or ignored. One of the FBI responses politely informed me that it might be able to start producing documents in the year 2026. I appealed the denials and delay tactics. For its part, the CIA claimed that it simply forgot about the request and later sent a letter apologizing, which it later refused to acknowledge it had sent. The appeals were also, unsurprisingly, denied on the grounds that Tinubu and Akande were entitled to personal privacy under the FOIA statutes off-cited Exemptions 6 and 7C. That presented the opportunity to sue, which given the stakes seemed like it might be worthwhile, especially after Tinubu won the election in February 2023. So I filed a FOIA lawsuit. The initial complaint was lodged on June 12, 2023. Later on, it was amended after the CIA issued its apology to include the CIA as a defendant. Much to my surprise, after the lawsuit was filed, some of the United States government agencies had a change of heart and by September agreed to start actually producing documents. There was a catch, however. They would neither confirm nor deny that the documents had anything to do with Bola Tinubu, only the Edwards drug ring in Indiana. This is where things get a bit complicated. The refusal to confirm or deny records is referred to as a Glomar response, in honor of a once-secret ship called the Glomar Explorer that was constructed to salvage the wreckage of a Soviet submarine off the ocean floor in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Since the CIA didn't want to admit that the Glomar Explorer even existed, it responded to a FOIA request by saying that it could neither confirm or deny anything about it. Now, the FBI, CIA, DEA, and State Department were giving Tinubu the Soviet submarine treatment, while the IRS and EOUSA simply claimed that they couldn't find records. Things are getting more complicated, but as it turns out, everything with Bola Tinubu is kind of complicated. As David Hundeyin pointed out in his article, is Bola Tinubu even his real name? There are reasons to believe that the answer is probably not. Does it matter at this point? Not really. But while we were puzzling over the government's refusal to admit what it had already clearly admitted in 1993, that documents exist about Tinubu, there were other more recent controversies that proved to be massive distractions. It's incontrovertible that Tinubu lied when he told a Nigerian court under oath that he had attended the University of Chicago. He didn't. But he did go to school in the Chicago area, at Southwest College, now Richard J. Daley College, before he transferred to Chicago State University to study accounting. A letter floating around on the internet from the FBI dated July 28, 2011, suggests that Bola Tinubu, with an O, never attended Chicago State University per its registrar. If authentic, this letter doesn't say much about the I part of the FBI. At this point, his academic records have surfaced from both institutions, and there is even a federal court case concerning the diploma he submitted to Nigeria's election commission, which was, for whatever reason, fake. But even despite the fake diploma, which one of his staff members probably generated on a diploma mill website to avoid the embarrassment of having lost the original, Tinubu did graduate from Chicago State University. The confusion doesn't stop there, however. One of Tinubu's records from the Southwest College Registrar's Office states that Tinubu's gender is F for female. Is this a one-letter typo, or a sign that he stole the identity of a woman named Bola Tinubu? It's most likely just an error on the part of an American working in the Southwest College Registrar's Office in 1976 who was unfamiliar with Nigerian names and perhaps assumed that a first name ending in the letter A belonged to a female. Tinubu appears in the Chicago State University yearbook not long after, looking very much like an M. But even this is not without some confounding factor, because he is listed in the 1980 yearbook. There was no yearbook in 1979 when he graduated. And he is listed under the wrong name, as are many students whose names have ridiculous typos, as Bola A. Thub. Also listed on the same page as Tinubu is Larmar Townsend, whose first name is almost certainly Lamar, not to mention Yuet and Yuan Trims, whose first names are almost certainly Yvonne and Yvette. Apparently proofreading was not taught at Chicago State University in 1979 or 1980. So, going back to the main question, why wouldn't the United States government simply state the obvious, which is that it's sitting on a trove of documents about Nigeria's president from his days laundering money? Before we could get a straight answer, on October 18, 2023, I received a strange notification. A Washington, D.C. lawyer named Brian Carey had filed an appearance on my behalf in the lawsuit, and he was sponsoring another lawyer named Christopher W. Carmichael from outside of the District of Columbia. This was interesting because I had no idea who Brian Carey or his colleague Christopher Carmichael actually were. Mr. Carey admitted on the phone a few minutes later that he wasn't even sure which case he had filed in, and that he was just following orders that someone had relayed to him. He had filed in the correct case, but for the wrong party. He quickly explained that he did not represent me after all, and would be refiling his paperwork, which was filed in error. In fact, Carey and Carmichael represented someone else. They represented the president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, who had decided to intervene in the case.
Okay, well, that is the documentary there. You heard it all, right? You heard it all. More will come. Don't forget, the FOI that was requested had the FBI reply in turn that there are some documents that will be released in 2026. We don't want to know to what extent Bola Tinubu has gone to US to play the hanky-panky game. But all we know is his documents that are incriminating or having his incriminating records will be coming out or surfacing one after the other. So why don't you make this video go viral the way we've been making it, so people will know that Beta Edu was not only learning from her own perspective, but she was learning from the big boss. Yeah, she was learning from the big boss. Of course, no wonder she was called to serve under his government. Him suspending her now is no news, because she has threatened, if you don't know, she has threatened to expose and ask why Bola Ahmed Tinubu was not questioned over his illegal dealings with the APC and his drug dealings in the early 90s and in the late 80s, alright? Thank you so much for staying this far. Please share these videos. Don't forget to like them. Drop your comment for us in the comment section. I'm not seeing those comments coming so far. And if you're watching me for the first time, please tap the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. You know why you're going to tap the notification bell? So that you won't get to see me late. You will see me promptly. See you next time. From me, bye.